Welcome back, soul friends, to the Minutes on Growth podcast. Today we have a special guest with us, Hope Pedraza. She is a wellness expert. She's also the host of the Hopeful and Wholesome podcast. Welcome.
Thank you so much for having me.
I'm so excited to have you on. You dive on such important topics that I feel like it's not discussed enough. So thank you for giving us the time and for being able, being willing to share your insights
Mhm.
with us on some of these topics. So let's dive right in. I would love for us to start the conversation with something that comes up so often, especially in the corporate world or for entrepreneurs, this idea of experiencing burnout. Can we talk about
Mhm.
it? What's your insights on it? What's the approach you want to take?
Yeah, no, I agree. And I think that it's so common, yet so many people, especially women, don't even realize that they're in burnout. Like there's so many symptoms and facets to it. And a lot of times we get like our bodies, as glorious as they're very adaptable. So we just kind of adapt and like, oh, I guess this is normal, right? And you're feeling that whether it's, somewhat noticeable symptoms like headaches and brain fog and migraines and anxiety, like my other feelings, or it's more subtle, where it's the wired but tired thing, where it's like my brain won't turn off, but I'm actually really tired, but I really can't go to sleep. Whether it's just kind of low key anxiety playing in the background, whether it's maybe low key inflammation, where you might have some joint pain here and there. But a lot of these symptoms we pass off as quote unquote normal when it's not really normal. Common, yes, but not necessarily normal. And so I think so many women who deal with burnout, they go so long before doing anything about it or addressing it because either they A, don't know that they're in it, or they B, they just try to brush off like, oh, it's not that big of a deal. But then the symptoms kind of compound and then they're kind of forced to deal with it. And I think a lot of the women I've worked with are in that boat where they've kind of pushed aside the little nagging symptoms that they've been feeling for a while. And then all of a sudden now it's instead of five symptoms, it's like 25. So they've got all these things like now it's like screaming at me. Now I have to do something about it. But I think that women are so susceptible for multiple reasons. There's a lot of rabbit holes we can go down here, but I feel like women are so much more susceptible to it just in kind of the hustle culture. I hate really using that word because it's so overplayed, but it is. I mean, that's really, we become kind of ingrained in this kind of masculine structure of how we work and do and productivity and efficiency and doing and doing and doing and doing. And women's bodies just aren't designed to operate like that. And so with my clients, there's a kind of a multifaceted approach I take for the burnout, but I think initially it's can we just listen to our body? Like it's just as simple as that. Can we just listen to our body, listen to our natural rhythms and cycles and our hormonal cycle? And I work with my clients a lot. We talk about cycle syncing and working with your cycle and even just understanding it, even if you don't necessarily want to build your business or your career around your cycle, just understanding your cycle and how your energy comes in waves. And we're on this 28-day hormonal cycle. And when we're forcing and pushing ourselves to kind of fit in again, kind of that masculine structure, because men run on a 24-hour hormonal cycle. So they can do the same thing yesterday and the day before and the day before and the day and 28 days after this because their hormonal cycle is the same every day. Women are not designed to work like that. And our creativity and our productivity waxes and wanes like the cycle of the moon, right? So I think even just this basic understanding of how our bodies work and our natural hormonal cycles and energy cycles and rhythms, all of that is crucial to for the first step of addressing burnout.
I love that. So much to unpack here. Can we talk about the hormonal cycles? Because when I
Yeah,
first
for
heard
sure.
about it, I was so intrigued, but it made so
Hmm.
much sense. And I don't think too many people know about it.
That's it. And it's funny. I did a workshop last week, this local group here where I live for this working moms group. And that was something we were talking about is at least for me, and I know I can speak for a lot of women, like maybe some women had a mom who was really into like teaching their daughter about it, but I was never taught this in school. Like my mom didn't tell me about it. You just weren't taught. It's like, oh, you have a period, you can get pregnant, the end. Like that's the extent of
Yeah.
it. So just understanding how your period works, how your menstrual cycle works. And so if you want to go like through how the cycle, like the
Yeah,
phases of the cycle,
please.
do you want me to
Yeah.
go through that? Yeah. Okay. Yeah. So your first day of your cycle is your first day of bleeding. And I think some women don't even know that the first day of their cycle is their first day of bleeding. So we start in the menstrual phase. And when I teach my clients, I like to use the seasons. And I know I'm not the only one. I'm not the only one. I didn't come up with this, but I like correlating the seasons with the phases of your cycle because it's kind of easier to get into your mind and contemplate like where I am and what's happening in each phase of my cycle. So the menstrual part would be the winter phase. And if you think about winter, right, it's this time where things are dying and we kind of go in and hibernate and we kind of go inward. And that's what we're designed to do during our menstrual cycle. And during this, the menstrual phase of your cycle, rather, and during this particular phase of your cycle, the right and left sides of our hemisphere, right and left hemispheres of our brain are talking to each other more easily. They're more connected. So this is the time where if we allow ourselves to get quiet and go inward, we get the creative downloads. Like we get the intuitive downloads, the intuitive hits. Like we can really go inward and see what comes up if we give ourselves the space for that. And so that's the time to rest, reflect. Maybe you're setting goals, maybe you're setting to-do lists. It's not the time to do those just yet, but we're kind of setting the stage for what comes next, which is spring, right? Spring comes after winter. So spring is when the follicular phase is starting, and this is where we're gearing up towards ovulation. And so when we're good after the menstruation phase, our hormones start to rise, right? So we feel our energy come back, we feel a little bit more confident, we're feeling a little better in our bodies. So this is the part of our phase where we can start to get things done. The creative, your brain kind of comes back on track, like comes back online. I know at least for me during my menstrual phase, it's like this static. It's like this static in my brain where it's like I can't really get, but so the static starts to clear, the fog starts to clear, and so we are starting to get things done and we're starting to feel productive and creative, gearing up towards summer, which is ovulation. Now, ovulation is technically just one day, it's like a one-day event, but we feel the effects of that maximum hormone levels. We feel that there's a lingering, there's kind of a before and after. So when we get to those peak hormones, which is ovulation, this is the time. Like we're feeling good, we're feeling confident, we're feeling social. This is the time to do the networking and the interviews and the putting yourself out there and doing the lives on social media and like you're feeling good about yourself. So ovulation, this is the summer phase. This is the time to do things, get out there, put yourself out there. From there, you go into your luteal phase. This is the fall, this is the autumn, right? And if you think about autumn, think about fall, things are kind of starting to wither away, right? The leaves start to fall off the trees, things are getting ready for winter. So autumn is that time of your cycle where kind of like nature does, like it's like letting go of what no longer serves it. And that's what we're meant to do during our luteal phase. And it's funny I'm saying this because one of my friends on Facebook posted something, it was either today or yesterday, and she was like, in my luteal rage, and she like went on this rant. I thought that was hilarious. I've never heard of luteal rage before. But in your luteal cycle, this is the time where it's like so our hormones start to drop. Our progesterone is rising, but the rest of our hormones are falling. And so this is the time of your cycle where you might recognize you're getting a little moody, maybe a little irritable, certain things are getting on your nerves. But I tell my clients, everybody has a BS meter, right? We can measure the BS. Your BS meter is like on high alert during your luteal phase because of how our mood is. So this really is the time to decide what do I need to get rid of? What's no longer serving me? What do I need to, maybe it's a time where you're like, I need to figure out what to delegate in my business or whatever. So this is the time where you just have this clarity on what is BS you need to BS you need to get rid of and kind of let those things go. The other thing about the luteal phase is because our creative brain kind of starts to wane during this part because we're gearing up for menstruation, which is coming next. this isn't the time to necessarily be creative and fun, and you're not really feeling fun and spunky when you're about to start your period. I think everybody knows that. But this is the time to like do the boring admin stuff, like schedule your boring admin tasks. And like for me, it's like do the stuff in QuickBooks and your spreadsheets and all this stuff. Like for me, I hate doing that stuff, but it doesn't require a whole lot of brain power. So it's stuff, it's just kind of like menial things that you can get done during your luteal phase because we don't have to shut off our creative brain to do that because it's kind of already kind of winding down. So that's a kind of a general overview of the cycle of your cycle.
Wow, Hope, I love the way you like broke it down for us and you connected it to the seasons. That's actually so much easier to remember because sometimes
It is.
when I first learned about it, I'm like, oh, what phase am I in? Like, what am I supposed to do right now? What am I not
Yes.
supposed to
Yeah.
do?
Yes.
So that connection, that was really powerful. Thank you for sharing. As you were
Mhm.
sharing, I thought of like this one, in my opinion, unhelpful advice that people give when someone's experiencing burnout, and it's just like, just rest. Like rest, like
Mm,
put everything off and just rest. For me, it doesn't work to just
right.
rest because there's so many other components,
Yes.
but I would love your expert opinion on this.
Yes. That's such a good point. And I think sometimes when we're in this kind of pattern of overwhelm and overstimulation, just telling somebody just rest, it's like your doctor being like, oh well, this stuff's caused by stress. Well, just don't be stressed. Like, okay, that's just not helpful. It's not helpful at all. And I think too, there's this nervous system component where when your nervous system is so wrapped up in the doing, and it doesn't feel safe to just rest. Like your nervous system is like, blah, when we're saying just rest. So I think there's kind of like levels to this, and there's kind of steps to take to get to that point where we can feel safe just resting. And so for me, it's when I'm helping my clients through burnout, and I mean, I've had my own journey through burnout. My completely tanked my adrenals and wrecked my body. For me, it was this kind of one step at a time where it was just taking little pieces out of my day where I could step away from work and go for a walk or go do something else. So it's just taking those little minutes. Can I stop working? Can I stop doing and go do something else rather than just sitting and resting? That didn't feel safe at all. Can I just go do something else? Can I like change my environment, flip the script, right? Make a shift and go outside and sit outside, or can I go for a walk, or can I just change my environment? So I think that as a first step is helpful for especially when somebody's nervous system is so tied up in the doing and it really doesn't feel safe to rest. And then we can do that more and more. We can build that safety in the body where it feels safe to rest. And we can go, you know, maybe you go take a nap, or maybe you go do a meditation and you sit still for a little while, whatever resting is for you. But finding that kind of mindful activity, something that where you're still doing but you're not working and being quote productive. And it's a tricky one too, because I know for me when I was trying to help myself out of burnout, I would tell myself like, "Oh yeah, I'm just gonna go for a walk and go for a walk outside." Well, then I'm like listening to a business podcast, or I'm listening to a master class. I'm still doing while I'm supposed to be not doing. So it was like an excuse for me to like, "Oh, I'm still gonna do, but I'm gonna change my environment. I'm gonna be sitting at my computer." So it's a slippery slope there to really untangle those pieces to feel safe to not do.
Mm. I love that you brought that up because that's something that I was navigating, I think like 2 or 3 years ago. And like I would go for these walks and I would love my daily walks. And then I would have the podcast and I would come back and I'm like, I'm still overstimulated. And so I really had to
Yes.
like check in with myself and be like, what do you need? And I've discovered that like driving with nothing on is like my go-to way
Mm,
of kind of regulating my nervous system, and that silence, creating that silence, being intentional with it. So just checking in with myself, like, what do you need right now? I think a lot of us
hmm
forget to ask ourselves. We ask other people, we ask our husband, our children, our families, like, what do you need? But we don't ask ourselves
hmm
that.
100%, 100%. And being okay sitting in the silence. And that's a tough one for people. I think a lot of people struggle sitting in silence and being in the silence. I was the same way though, recognizing that. And I'm the same way in the car. It depends on the car. Because some days I do want to have like I'm listening to something, or but a lot of days like I just a minute of silence. And especially in the car where it's like you're going home, or you're going like for me, I have a brick and mortar business too, where I'm about to be around people. Like just give me like some
Mhm.
peace and quiet and silence. And now I like crave that. It's like my time. Like I don't want to call anybody in the car. I don't want to talk to anybody. If I'm in there by myself, it's like, okay, can you just get silent? So I think that's important to pull out too is being able to create this space for quiet and silence. And I think there's so much um available when you give yourself that space. Like we are talking about the menstrual part of your cycle, or if you give yourself the space, you can have these opportunities for the creative downloads and the intuitive downloads or the divine downloads when we create this space for that stillness and silence. So I think that's an important part of it too.
Yeah, I really love how you take such a holistic approach to your work. And I've been looking into your work and I was like, wow, like I love how it's like the nutrition part and then it's the nervous system regulation part. But what really interested me was how you brought in human design. Can we talk about that? What,
Yes.
how, why, all of that.
All of it. Yeah, yeah. I love human design. And I think initially I just loved it so much and how it made me feel about myself that I'm like, I gotta share this with other people. Like I have to use this in my work. I found human design, I guess now it's been about 5 years ago. Just through I was working with a spiritual coach, and she wasn't a human design coach, but she had this little piece of human design in the work we were doing. And it was just enough to pique my interest. And I'm like, I've got to know more. So diving in, I worked with some human design mentors and decided to get certified and all that. For me, when I first discovered and dove in, it was, I think it's the way a lot of people feel when they discover about their human design. It's, it feels validating and it feels freeing and it feels um it's this permission slip to be authentically all of those things. And it's what really shifted how I was running my business, how I was showing up in my business, how I was addressing, caring for my physical body. It was this kind of healing part of the healing journey for myself and like healing the relationship with myself. I This is a side tangent here. I had a pretty extensive history of disordered eating behavior. And so for me, I just had this tumultuous relationship with myself for so long that human design was kind of the thing that just set me on the path to heal that part of myself and that relationship with myself. And so feeling that within me, I have to bring this into my work. So when I first started bringing it, so I started as a functional practitioner and I'm doing the labs and I'm helping people uncover, root cause of chronic symptoms. And working with a lot of women, I'm recognizing, okay, there's these emotional, energetic components that are causing these physical things to show up on the body, right? And I recognize that in my own body. I also have history of IBS, totally related to the disordered eating and my type A perfectionist personality. Like it's all related. But recognize that in myself and then seeing, patterns in women. And I'm like, and thinking, okay, if I only knew about your human design, like I feel like I could. So that was kind of for me the catalyst, like, okay, I can really dive into how to customize this process and how to really get, like we talk about root cause. In my opinion, I'm of the belief that all the physical things happening on the body, the actual root cause is an energetic piece. It's the energetic emotional piece. It's these patterns that are playing on in the energetic body. And so to really get to the bottom of that, well, why not use human design to really understand your energetic blueprint, to understand how your energy is moving through your body and how your energy is meant to move through the body and the environment and the universe, interact with people. And so I love being able to put all the puzzle pieces together. And, I have the functional labs. We can see, okay, this is what's actually going on in your physical body. But then let's look at your human design to see, we look at your open centers, your undefined centers, defined centers. We look at all these pieces to see why these physical things are showing up on your body.
I love it. It's such a unique perspective to it. And I think it's, similar to you, I have this belief that the physical and the energetic are interrelated. So being open to exploring that can be so insightful.
Yeah. Yeah. And I think that's a big piece of it. Just the a lot of women come to me, they don't necessarily have 58 things going wrong in their body, but they just want that insight. Like, I want to know what's going on in my body. I want to know why sometimes these things happen in my body. And they just want to know. So I think just that, I mean, knowledge is power, right? And so I think just having that feeling empowered and knowing I actually understand how my body is functioning and why I'm doing the things that I'm doing, it's empowering.
Mm. So I'm curious, based on your experience with your clients, what's the most common ailment you're seeing that's showing up in the physical and how it relates to the emotional and the energetic,
Mm.
especially
Hmm.
for female entrepreneurs?
Yeah. I think the most common, so the most common thing is related to, I feel like oh, there's a couple things. I'll say the first one that's coming to my mind is happening in the sacral center. And so our sacral center is associated with our reproductive organs. So, right, the sacral center is the center for creativity and sexuality and life force, right? That's where our life force comes from. And it's not lost on me that so many women deal with hormonal issues and that this is where it's all stemming from. So I have a lot of stories about this, but the emotion typically that's connected with this is shame. Shame is an emotion that lives in the sacral center. And it is unreal the amount of shame that women carry with us from birth. Like it's generational, right? We're literally born with it because of generations past of women who have lived and dealt with shame their entire lives. And they say science says that we carry up to 7 generations of, generational trauma within ourselves. I'd say it's probably more than that. So we're literally born with it. And so for no fault of our own, this is something I think all women are here to deal with. And it comes up so much. And I think that this is one of the most common connections with reproductive issues and hormonal issues and hormonal imbalances is this inherent shame that's in our DNA. It's
Mhm.
just in our cells, in our DNA. So I feel like that's probably the most common. And it's a tricky one too, because it's this also this layered thing.
Mhm.
And I find with my clients a lot of times it's like, okay, we have our own, situations in life where we felt shame in this life. But then it's like we peel back these other layers and there's other layers down there that, in my opinion, this is coming from generations past. And now we have to deal with like our ancestors' shame. But I do think that, I do think that's um part of our existence on this planet is to, heal generational trauma and generations past. So I feel I love being able to be a part of that with my clients. And like you're literally undoing generations
Mhm.
of trauma that have happened in women in however many generations past. So it's a beautiful thing to be able to heal that. But it's a tricky one. And I really feel like that one is something that all of us are here to heal and here to deal with.
So powerful. Thank you for bringing it up. And, shame being the lowest vibrational frequency emotion
Hmm.
on the chart.
Hmm.
It really is such a heavy emotion. A while back, I was speaking to a friend, and we were talking about actually shame and associated to the sacral chakra. And we brought up a topic, and I'd love to hear your perspective on it. We were talking about how our first experience with our menstrual cycle also impacts how we
Hmm.
feel. The energy around the sacral chakra and even the
Yeah.
emotion of shame. And so, what was your first experience like? And for her, it was something like, oh, it wasn't talked about. It was so hush hush. Like, it definitely didn't bring it up.
Mm.
And for me, it was a very
Yep.
different experience with like my dad, like celebrating me and like my parents taking
Oh,
me to the supermarket. And
that's
it was so
awesome.
like it was what I tell people, they're like, this is so odd for your
I
dad, but
think it's
like
beautiful. That's so sweet.
yeah, it was honestly, it was so lovely. And I never felt shame around having my menstrual cycle. Like
Mm,
it's something I so openly talk about. And again, it goes back to that first experience of, oh, this is my dad was like, congratulations, you're a woman. Like, what kind of candy do you want?
yeah.
Do you want wings or no
Oh my
wings for
gosh.
your pads? And I'm like, I don't even know what you're talking about.
That's so sweet.
But I'd love to know your perspective, like how that first experience, have you seen that
Yeah.
in clients?
I can't say I've had those exact conversations with clients, but it makes complete sense. And it makes sense too how you experience your period after that. Like how,
Mhm.
because and I think, in I mean, I think it's probably just Western society in general, Western cultures. It is something like we dread it, and it's like, oh, my period. Like, I mean, you hear regular everyday women talk about it. It's like it's horrible. Like we feel bad, and we're dreading it. And one of the things when I started bringing in kind of cycle syncing and these pieces into my work, one of the things I wanted to do was shift the narrative around everybody dreading their period. And so that's why I wanted to educate women on, okay, let's understand how your period works. So you feel more empowered around your period because I know like, hey, I know during my menstrual phase of my cycle, I'm gonna like for me, I don't schedule podcast interviews. I'm rearrange my schedule so I know I have time to just be still. I have time to go within. Like, and I know, okay, I'm going to create content during this. So you feel more empowered because you're maximizing your energy within each phase. So I think if we can understand the power that lies within your menstrual cycle, then it doesn't have to be this thing that we dread. Because the other thing is, on the other end of that, menopause, and this has been studied. There's studies that show this. Cultures who see menopause as this rite of passage into wisdom and this next stage of life, they don't have any symptoms. They literally have no symptoms during menopause. Whereas if you ask the majority of women in Western society, it's horrible. The hot
Mhm.
flashes and night sweats, the low libido, the painful sex, like all of it, it's horrible. Well, the narrative around menopause in Western society is like, well, that sucks. Like
Yeah.
it's going to be terrible. And you ask anybody, you ask your mom and your grandma, the majority of us, yours might be different because your family celebrated you. But the majority, it's like, it's terrible. Oh, it sucked. It was, so I think what you're saying makes total sense. And it's the energy and the intention and the narrative around these different phases of life totally impacts how you experience it. So I think that makes total sense. And I will say this, I wish everybody's dad would celebrate their daughters when they start their period. That is the sweetest thing I've ever heard. That's amazing. Well,
Yeah.
and I do think too, because I know for me, I started my period pretty late. I mean, I was like a senior in high school, but I know it was very hush hush. Like I didn't,
Mhm.
didn't want your dad to know you had to go get tampons and you didn't
Mhm.
want to talk to anybody about it. And you're like slowly trying to pass a tampon in class, like so none of the boys see it. So there is a whole thing about it. And like why? Every female on the face of the earth has one. So I don't know why it's such a big deal.
Yeah, definitely need to have these conversations more openly
Hmm.
and kind of really normalize it because it is a part of us. And I think the more we talk about it, the more, I don't know how to say it, but like we're releasing this
Mm.
shield that's on us, that's been put on
Hmm.
us, and
Yes, yes,
just
that's
freeing
it. And
ourselves.
that's it. It is freeing. And I do think that I mean, I'm saying like, what's the big deal? But we know what the big deal is. It's it's generations of women being banned from
Mhm.
society when they're bleeding part of their
Yes.
cycle. And it's women not being able to go into the temple during
Hmm.
when they're bleeding. Like it's generations of the patriarchy making us feel shame about something that happens to every woman for a very long time.
Yeah. Yeah. Wow. I love that we're talking about this. I love that the work you do again with the energy, with the emotions, with the holistic, the functional part. Before we wrap up, I'd love for us to actually go into the functional nutritional part. Um, I know a lot of the work you do around mineral balancing. Can we talk about that and like what it is and how it impacts our energy levels, how we show up?
Yeah, yeah. So mineral balancing is kind of the foundational piece of the functional nutrition piece that I work with my clients. And it's something that not a lot of people are addressing, not a lot of practitioners are addressing. Conventional medical doctors are really not addressing it. And and it's crazy to me. I can nerd on this all day. I've lots of certifications. I've done lots of courses on mineral balancing, so I love it and I love learning about it. But it's crazy how it's not something that's mainstream when we think about minerals, and this is something we learn in biology at some point. Like minerals are considered the spark plugs in the body, meaning that every reaction that happens in the body, minerals are either a catalyst or a cofactor, or they're playing a part in all these reactions in the body. So if we think about at a foundational level when we're addressing imbalances in the body, why wouldn't we start with the minerals, the most foundational piece of what's happening in the body? So I love starting there, and there's so much that we can address just looking at the minerals. And so I do, when I'm looking at minerals with my clients, I run what's called a hair tissue and mineral analysis, or an HTMA. And you're literally sending in some of your hair. And it's giving you a ton of data on
Wow.
minerals, like a couple dozen different minerals, toxic elements, heavy metals, and it looks at the relationships between the minerals. So we can see what's going on with your adrenals and your thyroid and your carb metabolism and your nervous system and how your liver is functioning. And there's so many things we can look at just looking at minerals. And this really is, in my opinion, I mean, women, so many women come to me and it's hormonal things, right? They're like, fix my hormones. They just want me to fix their hormones, which is fine. I can help fix your hormones, but I'm never going to start with the hormones. The hormones are always the last step we're going to take because we have to start at that foundational piece, what's happening at a cellular level. And what's happening at a cellular level is what's going on with your minerals. So this is the foundational piece.
Wow. I had no idea.
Most people don't. I mean, it's not something it's not very common, right? It's not a very common thing that we're looking at. And the way that I measure it, the way that I test it is also not super common. Like, conventional medical doctors, you can go get a blood lab at the doctor,
Mhm.
right? A doctor will do a blood lab and they can look at some of your minerals. But just like with any blood lab, a blood lab is just a blip in time, right? It's looking at what's going on in
Mhm.
my body right now. So if you do the same lab tomorrow, it could look different, right? With an HTMA, we're looking at your hair as a tissue. This is what's going on chronically in the body. So we can get a better look at what's been going on over a period of time versus right now. So it's going to give a deeper look. It's going to be a more accurate look. And since it's a tissue, hair is a tissue, it's also going to measure and read the minerals differently. Because not to get too sciencey here, but a lot of minerals are intracellular, meaning they're supposed to be in your cell. So if I'm measuring it from the blood, it's really not giving you an accurate picture of some of the specific minerals that we want to look at in an HTMA. So it's just going to be a more accurate look looking at it through that lens.
Wow. So client comes to you, you run these tests. So
Mhm.
you're looking at it, from a cellular level, you're looking at it from an energetic level, you're looking at it from an emotional level, and through, this expanded perspective, you're able to help them prevent burnout, have higher energy levels, less chronic illness, like or no chronic illness, right?
Mhm. Yeah, yeah, exactly. Yeah, it's really just putting all the puzzle pieces together. And it's, like I said, I'll do the physical part first. And I think that's one thing that the women I work with love because I mean they love all of it. But looking at the physical piece, it's there's no more guesswork. I don't have to guess if
Yeah.
it's my hormones or is it my gut or is it my, whatever. You don't have to guess. You don't have to keep trying. We can actually look at, like, we have empirical data on the labs.
Mhm.
Like, this is what's actually happening in your body. And then from there, yeah, then I would tie in the human design and the energetic pieces and do all of that work.
Amazing. If you could go back to your younger self, what's one piece of advice you would tell her, knowing what you know today and having gone through what you've gone through with burnout?
Hmm. Hmm. A lot. A lot. Um, I think the main lesson I would want her to know, or the main piece of wisdom, is it doesn't have to be about perfection. I think that that was such a big piece of my downfall with, the disordered eating behavior and the burnout and all of that. It was just everything had to be perfect. And I think it's that self-love. Again, it's like a term I don't love to use because it's so overused, but that was something like I had no concept of that, like loving myself. And so I think for me, it was me being a perfectionist, was having needing like this perpetual need to prove my worth. And if I could just understand what self-love really means, I think that would have I mean, I wouldn't go back and change a thing because the lessons are the gold, right? So the lessons are there. But that's what I would tell her. I would tell my younger self is perfection isn't the goal. Like the goal is connection with yourself. And I think that's the piece that was missing for me.
I love that. I created a reel yesterday. You know that trending reel of I had coffee with my younger self? And that was
Uh-huh.
exactly what I
Yes.
told her. I told her perfection is not
Really?
the goal, it's genuine connection.
Oh my gosh, we're on the same wavelength. That's crazy.
Yeah, so
Wow, that's
wild.
amazing. That's
Yeah.
amazing. Oh my gosh.
Um, it's been such an honor, Hope, having you on and wealth of wisdom and insights. How can
Thank
people
you.
connect with you?
Yeah, you can find me on Instagram. I'm at the Hope Pedraza. My website is hopefulandwholesome.com. And then I also have a podcast, Hopeful and Wholesome.
Amazing. I'll put all of that in the show notes. Once again, thank you for coming on, for giving us your time and sharing all your insights with us. It's been really, really insightful.
Thank you. Thank you so much for having me.
Thank you, everyone, for listening. Speak soon.